What cringy thing did you do in the past that still keeps you up at night? My crush came to my house to do a high school project. It involved the internet, and while she sat next to me, she tried to navigate to Google on my computer. Unfortunately, the address bar autofilled and took her to my last Google search. Page 2 of the results for her name. Every link had been clicked. We both just sat in silence. During my alcohol phase, I went on Facebook to search for and pore over pictures of my crush. When I woke up in the morning, I realized that I had actually created an event with her name as the title. For those asking, I believe the event was set as public. The name I put was a short version of her first name, but everyone knew. We'd never spoken since, and the last time I saw her on the street, I hid. Last year, on New Year's Eve, I was at a big bar in New York with friends, and I got kinda wasted and went outside for a cigarette at one point. I must have actually been outside for the countdown because when I came back in, I looked at my phone and it was like 12:02, and I asked my friend why there wasn't a countdown done by the DJ. I couldn't really hear what he said, so I went up to the DJ and asked to use the mic, and I did a second countdown in front of the entire bar, with hundreds of people, starting at 30, and no one joined in. I love these starting at 30. Awkward enough as is. My coworker and I were taking the stairs to get to my office to be healthy. He mentioned my skirt was crooked, so I readjusted it as we stepped out, and a bunch of the bosses were there, staring at two people coming out of the emergency staircase all flushed and sweaty, and one of them was readjusting her skirt. The raised eyebrows were bad enough. The smirk from this really pervy boss was the worst. I was really sick one day in high school, and my mother thought I was faking it and still made me go. I sneezed so hard I crapped myself. It was everywhere. I called her to ask if she could pick me up from school or at least bring me a change of clothes, but she still thought I was lying. Luckily, my gym teacher found me a pair of pants, but I had to deal with my shame for the rest of the school year. I got made fun of a lot for that. I ran just like Naruto throughout high school, from switching class to class, during lunchtime, catching the bus, etc. I always thought I was cool. When I was in middle school, these older kids were making fun of me, so I turned and yelled at them, "I can't hear you, I have a potato in my ear," like I was the smartest freaking person on earth. They proceeded to continue making fun of me and my potato ear. I had a female family friend. We ended up going to the same school in the end, and she was having a party that evening. We were across the room from each other in the canteen, in two separate lunch queues. There was a lot of shouting across from people trying to talk to their friends, and I caught her calling to me and trying to say something. I keep shouting back, "What?" Because it's so noisy. Me, "I can't hear you, but we can chat at the party, yeah?" The room suddenly goes quiet. Her, "You're not invited, and I'm not even trying to talk to you." Turns out she was trying to talk to her friend behind me. Don't know why this makes me cringe every time I think back to it, but it's probably to do with how cool I felt at 11 being friends with one of the cool girls by default, who, it turns out, never really liked me anyway. When I got my period for the first time, I took it upon myself to warn all of my friends, some of whom I wasn't even very close with via email, that I might be moody because, you know, womanhood and all. Ugh. After a girl forgave me for I don't even remember what, I said, "Where's my hug?" Oh god, the flashbacks. In 6th grade, I started playing Guitar Hero 3. That was my intro into any music differing from hip-hop, so I basically threw the entire track list onto my iPod and would walk around campus air guitaring, or more like air guitar heroing, I guess? Anyway, one day in class, my teacher asked the class if any of us played an instrument, and the conversation went like this. "Noob 21, don't you play guitar?" "No, I actually play Guitar Hero, basically the same thing." I do actually play guitar now, and this thought makes me cringe so much. I openly considered myself as a juggalo and had the Coolio hairstyle to match. I am a very pale ginger. Cold sweats and stifled vomit come with these memories. In middle school, we had this mean cooking teacher that everyone hated until our last year of being there. She seemed to lighten up a lot. On our last day of school, everyone was hugging her and saying goodbye in the front part of the school, and I decided why the hell not, she's pretty cool. So as she was walking up the walkway towards me, I put out my arms to hug her, and she just walked right past me, and I hear laughter from behind me, and it's my crush and her friends dying of laughter. Still kills me to this day. I went to a Blue Jays game. I'm from the States. When I was like 7, I thought the US hated Canada and started loudly booing the national anthem. My mom was not happy. I guess it's not as cringy now, considering I was a kid when it first happened, but back in first grade, we were writing a test or something and I had to go to the washroom badly, but the teacher refused to let me go until the tests were finished. So I peed all over my chair. There was a huge puddle all over the floor. The girl next to me asked me what was all over my seat, and I said it must have been water. She dipped her fingers in it and licked it and said, "Yep, it's just water." No one ended up finding out I had pissed myself, so that's always good. Every single thing I posted on Facebook before 2013. Ugh. When I was in my first year of high school, I was in a show where we were divided into groups. In my group, there was a girl who had recently become a mother. I remember that right before one of the shows, she was standing with her friends and being very negative about the show and said she wished she didn't have to do it. For some inane, insane, idiotic reason, I thought it would be hilarious to say, "Do the show or I'll kill your baby." She never spoke to me again, and I will never forget the way she and her friends looked at me. I cringe so hard every time I think about this. I was invited to the birthday party of someone I'd only met a couple of times, but we had a lot of mutual friends. I was sitting in the lounge having a drink, and the birthday guy came in and leaned over me with his arms outstretched. So I hugged him. He was reaching for something behind me. There was a brief time in middle school in which I would speak in the manner of Tony Scarface Montana. "Shut up, you pile of cockroaches." So embarrassing. I used to wear a fedora, unironically. Farted in karate class. I was like 8, but never went back after that. Sent like 5 love confessions to a girl in high school over MySpace, then chickened out and deleted them. Turns out deleting stuff from the sent box doesn't unsend the message. I once wrote a letter in 2nd grade to my best friend's older sister that was in 4th grade. It was gushy and gooey and romantic. He passed it on, and I sort of forgot about it until one day several weeks later when I asked him, "Oh, by the way, what did she say?" And he responded, "She kind of just laughed." I still cringe when she brings it up, and now we're in our 20s. When I was 17, I was texting my boyfriend and remember saying, "I can't wait for you to come over this weekend so we can have sex and eat crabs." I sent it to my stepdad. My friends and I used to watch a British comedy called The League of Gentlemen. There was a scene where a character said, "You, monkey man." For some stupid reason, we coined the phrase and used it to wind each other up. One night, we were in the pub watching the football World Cup, and Ronaldinho came onto the screen, and I shouted, "You, monkey man," in a packed pub. Obviously, there were people of different races there. It was absolutely horrifying. It just came out without thinking. I'm not in the slightest bit racist. My mates still remind me of it 15 years on, and the cringe is still raw. My fanfiction.net account, when Warriors, the cats, and PJO were still popular among teens. I used to frequent a role-playing forum. My characters were the cringe crap, and looking back, I question why I roleplayed talking cats and demigods. Due to me having over 10k posts on those places, I can't exactly go back to delete them. And mods deleting them would lower the total post count number, which I think might have reached 600 to 700k in the time that I've been gone. I still talk to friends from the forum though. Waited in line at a gas station bathroom. I went in and took a gigantic crap and clogged the toilet. I tried to plunge it, but nothing worked, so I walked out with about 3 guys staring at me waiting to go in. I quickly drove off only to find out I had left my phone in the bathroom. Had to turn around and ask for my phone while everyone just stared at me. Me and 2 friends of mine were speaking in a Facebook group chat about going to the gym later. One of my friends, who was new in town, became friends due to a relationship he'd formed whilst living in a different country and was only coming on a free trial to see if he'd join. He was giving it the big one about how he smashed the gym back in hometown, etc. In the middle of arranging times and crap, he sent a message to the chat. What gym machines are there? Then he sent, how to use the machines convincingly. We questioned, he said he lied and had never been to a gym and thought he was typing on Google. 5th grade Valentine's Day, I gave 2 girls a choice of necklaces at the same time. Like, I get that I was trying to be a player back then, but damn, that was cringy. I once referred to a friend as having an electric personality at his funeral, 5 days after he had been electrocuted. The words kinda just hung in the air at the funeral home, swirling around the group of 8 or 9 of us that were reminiscing. One of the guys looked at me and winced. A girl rolled her eyes and turned her back toward me. I swear it was innocent, but I never have before or since so badly wanted to be swallowed up by the floor. In 3rd grade, my mother gave me 30 Valentine's Day cards to write my classmates' names and attach a small candy. I instead wrote the name of my 3rd grade crush in another class on all of the cards. All of them. I proceeded to leave them by his classroom door while he was at recess. Sure enough, that boy never talked to me again. In middle school, I dated a guy I didn't really like for less than 24 hours. We went on a walk, and while he was standing next to me, I texted on my phone that I didn't want to date him anymore and that we should just be friends. I handed my phone to him to show the message, and he cried. I went to a surprise birthday party for a friend of mine that I had a crush on in middle school, and my mom dropped me off at her driveway, which was quite long. I walked into the house and everyone yelled surprise. They thought I was her. I was so embarrassed. I was a loner guy just trying to fit in, so everyone is upset at me and making fun of me, and in walks the birthday girl. So I messed up her surprise. Later on, there is some music playing and people are dancing together. I finally get to dance with her, and literally mid-dance she runs off to talk to her friend and left me. That whole night sends cringes up my spine. The funny comments I wrote in the YouTube comment section. I'm female. I remember meeting a previous boyfriend's father. I didn't know what to do, so I went to shake his hand and he just stared at it and then clasped it and squeezed it, not knowing what to do. Everyone was looking and watching, wondering why on earth I went to shake his hand. Thankfully, it's the one and only time I met him. So my grandpa was in the hospital very sick with lung cancer, and the whole family was gathered in the waiting room. Both sides of the family, enter me, the kid. I was mercilessly jumping on my older sister because she said something mean to me, and then I stopped, turned to her and said, "Are you dead yet?" I got stares from every person in the room, even a few non-family members. I still cringe thinking back to it. I remember my crush was texting me and she said she liked me a lot. I was so excited that I screenshot the text and wanted to send it to my best friend. I was playing a video game at the same time and I accidentally sent it to my crush and not my friend. I used to run up the stairwell to look down at cleavage for the spank bank inventory. I went over to a chick's house sophomore year in high school. Her friend was spending the night. I did too. They both cuddle up next to me on the couch in the basement, one girl under each arm running their fingers across my chest. They were talking about how they were practicing kissing and things before I came over. What did I do? I went to sleep. Two chicks ready to go, and I went to sleep. Never connected the dots until about a year later. Oh, middle school. Tried to date basically every girl in my grade without the slightest realization of self-awareness or the fact that girls talk to each other. I thought I had a solid chance with every single one of them. Cringe. I grew up in a small, backward, extremely white little town. In an attempt to bring a bit of international flair to our local high school, we hosted a model United Nations event involving several other nearby schools, some from a moderately sized city. Being a map-loving nerd, I was anxious to join in on this cosmopolitan fun, so I convinced one of my friends to join me as a co-delegate, and we set about getting ourselves a juicy country to represent. We succeeded. It was 2002, 9/11 was a fresh memory, and we drew Iraq. Brilliant. The theatrics practically wrote themselves. The first day was quiet and fairly uneventful, as most of the delegates were getting used to their roles. I got up to speak on a handful of motions, but nothing really lived up to our crap-disturbing potential as a member of George Bush's axis of evil. Determined to do more on the second day, I read through the rules of order for something I could use to generate controversy and disrupt the proceedings. That's when I saw it, a clause stating that delegates should be allowed time for silent prayer at the beginning of each session. Perfect. I told my co-delegate to bring a bath towel to school the next day and went home filled with glee. True to my word, immediately after the opening ceremonies, I grabbed my towel and my co-delegate and rose on a point of order, and with a pounding heart and a cocky grin on my face, I demanded our minute of prayer time. The head table debated for a minute, and then decided to let me have it. It was written down after all, so they couldn't do much about it. A low-level rumble of the curious conversation went through the room. With as much bravado as my 16-year-old self could muster, I marched to the front and center of the auditorium, and with 400 people watching, I whipped out my towel and laid it on the floor. Then I got down on my knees and started feverishly bowing to Mecca as fast as I could. There was dead silence in the room. For 30 seconds, my co-delegate and I, plus the delegate from Saudi Arabia who joined us in a gesture of Middle Eastern solidarity, prostrated ourselves in a well-intentioned but utterly tone-deaf mockery of the Salah. Shaking from nervousness but proud of having taken action to raise the level of realism in our little assembly, I walked back to my seat. The silence continued for a moment before the head table announced the first resolution of the day. Right then, the delegate from Libya, a guy wearing what appeared to be an authentic turban, walked up to the microphone. On the point of personal privilege, he explained that he was a real Muslim and that our cartoonish take on his morning prayers was deeply offensive. He asked us for an apology. More silence followed as every head in the room turned to look at me, and that's when I knew that everyone thought I was the worst kind of racist. Turning scarlet with embarrassment, I walked up to the microphone and mumbled a quick apology and then planted myself firmly in my seat and resolved not to speak again for the rest of the event. No one spoke to my partner or me. During the lunch break, we stood by ourselves like the pariahs that we were. Only one person, a girl from another school, came up to us to say she understood what we were trying to do and she was sorry it went so terribly. I nearly burst with gratitude. I finally reached the point now, 15 years later, where I can look back on that day and laugh about it. But for years afterward, it haunted me and would pop into my mind at strange moments to leave me shaking my head and muttering, "What was I thinking?" Being in 6th grade and completely lacking any social awareness, I thought it would be hilarious to walk up to a girl in the cafeteria and quote Napoleon Dynamite. You know, the, "Do you drink 1% because you think you're fat?" Well, needless to say, I delivered the whole thing terribly and she did not get the reference. A couple of her friends later accosted me as apparently she was bulimic. I'm 22 now and I still cringe every time I think about it. It was homecoming sophomore year. I had a crush on a junior girl and planned a slow dance with her. For some context, at my school, people didn't really ask each other out, so dances were it. She is dancing with another female friend who was liked by a male friend of mine, so he goes over there and asks the other girl to dance, resulting in my crush dancing with me. We tried talking to each other, but the music was a bit loud, making it awkward. After the song ended, another slow song played. The first warning sign should have been that she left to get a drink. She was talking with the other girl at the drinks, and I left, feeling foolishly confident. I wanted to dance again, so I stayed with her group and my male friend. I didn't realize how creepy it was. I never did get that dance, but at the end of the night I asked for a ride home. We both lived close to the school. We talked on the way home, and it seemed like she enjoyed the night. Fast forward to next week and she's avoiding me. Turns out I creeped her out with my social awkwardness. I threw away a wonderful friendship in a night of terrible misunderstandings. To this day, we don't really talk outside of group settings. I called my 1st grade teacher Mommy in front of everyone in the class. Back in 2012, I spiraled down into deep depression and started self-harming. At the time, I didn't realize I was cutting at times for attention, but now I know it was. I remember I got yelled at for something by my dad and ran upstairs, self-harmed, then showed him saying, "You made me do this!" He cried. My mother cried. I wish I could have taken it back. Looking back now years later, I still feel terrible for what I put my parents through. All the pain I caused them. To this day, I still apologize to them for acting that way and for how horrible I was to say those things to them. Every time they've forgiven me and tell me how much they love me, and I love them so much, but deep down in my heart, I feel like I can never forgive myself for what I put them through. That is what keeps me up at night. I promise I'm fine now with the self-harming. I haven't in years and I never want to do it ever again. Talking to girls during AIM time. I am glad I can't access that anymore, as the password info has been seared from my memory. My ex-husband and I were in our early 20s and had just moved into a big, new and very brightly lit apartment complex in Eugene. One night, actually like 1 a.m., he dared me to run around the entire complex with him bare naked. I should add that I'm very shy, but I can't pass up a dare when I'm certain I will win. So ready, set, go, and I flew out the door and was halfway down the sidewalk when I realized he had simply shut the door and locked it and had never followed. I had to knock and beg to be let in while he just thought it was the funniest thing ever. I could have been arrested. I used to live with my grandma. One day I was getting ready to walk over to the laundromat to move my clothes over from the washer to the dryer. As I was putting my shoes on, my grandma says, "I hope there aren't any pretty girls in the laundry room." Puzzled, I asked her what she was talking about. She motioned to my pants and told me to zip up. I looked down and lo and behold, my manhood was just hanging out for the world to see. Every time I remember that fateful evening, I lose a bit of my will to live. When I was 13, I had my first alcoholic beverage at some party. Then I came home and posted like 20 wasted status updates on Facebook, all within like 10 minutes, all purposefully misspelled and all filled with BS like how I almost fell down the stairs and how wasted I was. Man. When I was in elementary school, there was this girl that I had a massive crush on. So being the puddle of awkwardness that I am, whenever she would put her book bag in her locker, her classroom was across the hall from mine, I would say, "Happy birthday," to her. I did this every day, and it's so cringeworthy that I literally got sick from thinking about it. The cringe kept me up until 2 a.m., and as you know, if you don't get enough sleep, it can make you sick. Recently, though, that girl confronted me over Instagram about it, and I hate my elementary school self with a burning passion. Me and a coworker had a thing for a bit. As we're in the parking lot outside of the store we worked at, I'm leaning against the car trunk behind her as she's chatting with another coworker. She's wearing a top that exposes the small of her back. I reach into my pocket and I feel a ketchup packet I had stashed there during my lunch break. So I open the ketchup packet and apply some ketchup to the small of her back. She reaches back there, brings her hand in front of her face, slowly turns around and looks at me with this disgusted look on her face, and utters, "What the hell?" I can't recall what thought progression led me to doing that. My Wednesday Addams phase. I loved the movies. I loved them too much. I asked people to call me Wednesday. I tried to act like her. I even signed, yearbooks and crap in her name. This haunts me. I once convinced my friend to sing Hips Don't Lie with me for karaoke. I took Spanish classes, so the rapping in Spanish couldn't have been that hard. It was terrible. The entire crowd stared at us blankly the entire time. I definitely could not rap in Spanish. I tried to keep up but was really just mumbling nonsense, then stopped trying and danced awkwardly in silence until that part was over. When the song ended, only a few people clapped politely. Our friendship didn't survive that night, and I can't listen to that song anymore. In middle school, we were able to send our classmates candy canes with cards attached as a part of our pre-holiday festivities. It was well understood that if you were bold, or socially inept enough to send one to your crush, you would do so anonymously. Being the 12-year-old Casanova that I was, I decided to send one to my crush. Pretty standard, except on the card I wrote, "Will you be my Christmas miracle?" and then signed my name in big bold letters at the bottom. For those of you wondering, I am indeed still a virgin, nearly 10 years on. I did karate as a kid. On Halloween night, they encouraged us to come and play on the fun jumps and bob for apples, dressed in a costume, of course. I dressed up as a ninja and was ready to kick ass ninja style. However, I was flawed. Forgot my underwear. No matter, I hardly had a conscience and gave zero fricks. In the middle of play, they stopped us to have some sort of contest where we show off our moves to the senseis one at a time. When it was my turn, I walked up and went freaking crazy, punching, spinning, and my downfall, a jumping scissor kick that exposed my 9-year-old peen flopping around. I'll never forget how shocked they all looked and didn't even realize until reading this thread how awkward it all was. Bonus, didn't win the contest, must have not impressed the crowd. Unintentional, but I was talking about this attractive girl who was single and would be a good match for a mutual friend. My wife didn't go to the same school, so I searched Facebook and found her and showed her best pic to my wife. My wife accidentally liked the photo that was 3 years old of someone I haven't seen in 15 plus years. We aren't even Facebook friends. It was pajama day in 8th grade. Some kid was going around pulling down the pants of the boys in the courtyard. He snuck up behind me and yanked my flannel shorts down along with my boxers. I did a panic jig before picking up my pants. It was a cold morning and Mini-Me was flopping around everywhere. I was 6'3" at the time and got the nickname Biggie Smalls. In the 8th grade, they had a breakdancing circle in the gymnasium because of some event. I was always interested in breakdancing, so I was standing where I could see them spin. One of my friends then thought it would be funny to push me into the circle. I can't dance for crap. I remember the way the embarrassment felt, flooding my body like a cold yet warm shower. Still, dunno why I stood in place waving my arms in what was supposed to mimic dance for so long when nobody was forcing me to dance or stay in the circle. Still makes me cringe. Back when I was young and dumb, and not too long out of high school, I broke up with my girlfriend, now my wife, bless her, and got bored a couple of weeks later. A friend and I were talking about Craigslist and how he got laid meeting some girls on there. Being the socially inept idiot that I was at the time, I later that day decided to make a Craigslist personal ad that didn't give my personal info but had a couple of photos of me. I knew bots would reply like crazy, so I said to say something like, "I'm a real person" in the replies. The very next day, I woke up to a handful of embarrassing Facebook notifications of my ex, her mother, and her friends saying variations of "I'm a real person" on my wall and comments on my statuses about Craigslist. Christ, it was embarrassing. I've never deleted anything so quickly as I did that stupid post. I eventually realized what I had and made it up to her, and I am now happily married. It's a bit of a joke between us now, but when someone mentions Craigslist around me, I still cringe so hard, especially if I'm with her. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a story you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.